And some weekly honors being handed out on Monday. Big Red sophomore wide receiver Samuel Masungu being named Offensive Player of the Week after Cornell's road win over Princeton on Saturday. Masungu racked up 8 catches for 165 yards and a touchdown. One of those catches being an 82-yard catch from Jamison Wong. Masungu's 165 receiving yards is the most by any Ivy League player this season. And he wasn't the only one. A pair of hockey players getting some honors as well. Sophomore forward Ryan Walsh earning Forward of the Week after logging a league-leading 3 points with 1 goal and 2 assists in the sweep against North Dakota. Ian Shane earned MAC Goaltender of the Week. Last year's ECAC Goaltender of the Year saved 48 of the 52 shots on goal in that series.